For many people, overgiving is not just generosity, it's a strategy for emotional safety. That's why boundaries can feel so terrifying. They don't just threaten convenience, they threaten our very identity. So they threaten things with questions like, will people still like me? Will people still need me? Will I still belong? Will I still feel safe if someone's disappointed? Can I survive conflict? Can I survive someone misunderstanding me? That's much deeper than communication skills. Hi, I'm Barb Nangle, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. If you're tired of feeling fragmented, emotionally overwhelmed, stuck in people-pleasing, approval-seeking, overthinking, or losing yourself in relationships, you're in the right place. This podcast is about recovery for real life. Through honest stories, practical tools, and lessons I've learned through 12-Step Recovery, boundaries work, and over 4 decades of personal growth, we explore what it actually takes to stop abandoning yourself and build a life that feels more authentic, grounded, and whole. We'll talk about things like boundaries, shame, family dysfunction, reparenting, emotional regulation, self-trust, recovery, and creating internal safety so you can stay connected to yourself even when life gets hard. I'm a boundaries coach, speaker, author, and woman in recovery, and my approach is raw, honest, practical, and sometimes a little bit, a lot, sweary. I'm also an avid beachcomber. My hands are basically always cold, so I wear fingerless gloves most of the year. And I still get weirdly excited when I spot license plates with my initials BN. I don't speak for or represent any particular 12-step fellowship, though I'm deeply grateful for the role recovery has played in my life. If you're ready for real talk, emotional healing, and practical tools to help you go from fragmented to whole, keep listening. This is episode 353, What My Coaching Clients Taught Me About Internal Safety. This month, we've been talking about self-care and self-care boundaries, and today's episode is a little different. Recently, I spent time analyzing 12 different coaching sessions from my work with clients. I wasn't looking for testimonials or success stories. I was looking for patterns. This comes from my training as a sociologist, where that's what we do. We look for social patterns in society. So in terms of analyzing my client sessions, I wanted to understand more deeply what actually happens when people struggle with boundaries. What causes them to override themselves and what they know they want to do? Why do people who intellectually understand boundaries still collapse emotionally in real life? And honestly, what emerged surprised even me. But before I get into that, I want to share something that I learned this past week when hanging out with a couple of fellow travelers in my ACA program. One of them is a survivor of incest, and they just recently found the fellowship SIA, Survivors of Incest Anonymous. And in it, they found the place they've been looking for their entire lives. Even in the ACA program, which is for people who grew up with intergenerational dysfunction, many of whom experience sexual abuse, this fellow traveler has not gotten the understanding and support of the people in the room that he wanted, needed, and deserved their entire life. I'm sharing this here and now because I've been in recovery programs for 11 years and I'd never heard of SIA. And I was talking last night to a sponsee who lives in an entirely different region of the country and has been in recovery for 17 years, and she'd never heard of SIA either. So clearly, we need to get the word out. I've put a link to the SIA website in the show notes. Please let others know that this fellowship exists. SIA, Survivors of Incest Anonymous. Okay, now back to the insights and understanding I got from analyzing 12 different coaching sessions. One of the biggest realizations I had was this. My work is not fundamentally teaching people how to set boundaries. It's about helping people to remain connected to themselves when emotional discomfort appears. So here's what I mean by remain connected to yourself. It's things like noticing your own needs, feelings, limits, and truth in real time, not overriding those signals when discomfort appears, tolerating guilt, disappointment, or tension without abandoning yourself, staying grounded in what's true for you even when someone else reacts, no longer allowing other people's emotions to become the determining factor in your choices, and holding on to yourself emotionally under pressure. That distinction showed up over and over and over again. Again and again, clients came into coaching believing their struggles were about things like communication, conflict, difficult people, saying no, work stress, guilt, or relationships. But underneath those surface concerns was the same recurring mechanism. I leave myself the moment discomfort starts. That's what I kept seeing. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. What became really clear is that most people do not actually need more information about boundaries. Many of my clients already know what healthy boundaries are, what they, quote, should do, and what they need. Their struggle is not lack of knowledge. Their struggle is nervous system activation when boundaries become emotionally real. People become dysregulated by what boundaries expose. So possible disappointment, loss of role identity, uncertainty, fear of being disconnected from others, guilt, grief, lack of control, not knowing how others will respond, the loss of external validation as a stabilizing force in their life. And for many people, the struggle doesn't even begin after they set the boundary. It begins the moment they even think about setting one. The guilt starts coming up. They start second guessing themselves. They go into fear. Their body starts reacting like they're under threat, even if logically they know they're allowed to say no. That was absolutely the case for me. When I first started setting boundaries, I literally felt like I was going to die, as if my life was under threat. And I think a lot of people listening will recognize that feeling. Intellectually, they know they're allowed to say no, but emotionally and physically, it can feel terrifying. And honestly, this connects deeply to self-care, the theme of this month. Because I think many people assume self-care is mainly about behaviors, taking time off, saying no, resting, doing nice things for yourself, not overworking, creating balance. And yes, those things matter. Of course they do. But what these transcripts revealed is that many people can't sustain self-care because prioritizing themselves does not feel emotionally safe. Their nervous system interprets prioritizing yourself as somehow dangerous, not logically, but emotionally in relationships and internally. So what happens? They override themselves. One of the strongest patterns I noticed across these coaching sessions was that clients were repeatedly trying to create emotional safety externally rather than internally. They were trying to feel okay through things like being useful, managing others' reactions, avoiding disappointment, whether it's theirs or someone else's, overfunctioning, doing emotional labor that wasn't theirs to own, trying to control outcomes, preventing conflict, keeping everybody happy, performing happiness, trying to make sure everyone understood, trying to avoid upsetting people. And I want you to really hear this. For many people, overgiving is not just generosity, it's a strategy for emotional safety. That's why boundaries can feel so terrifying. They don't just threaten convenience, they threaten our very identity. So they threaten things with questions like, will people still like me? Will people still need me? Will I still belong? Will I still feel safe if someone's disappointed? Can I survive conflict? Can I survive someone misunderstanding me? That's much deeper than communication skills. Another thing I saw repeatedly was that clients were treating discomfort as evidence they were doing something wrong. This was everywhere. If they felt guilty, then they assumed they were doing something terribly wrong and they had to fix it. If they felt anxious, they assumed something bad was happening or was going to happen. If someone was disappointed, they assumed they had caused harm. If there was tension, they assumed the relationship was in danger. But discomfort and danger are not the same thing. I'm going to say that again in a slightly different way. Discomfort does not mean danger. One of the most important things I found myself doing repeatedly in these coaching sessions was helping people reinterpret discomfort, helping them understand things like guilt does not automatically mean you did something wrong. Anxiety doesn't automatically mean danger. Tension doesn't automatically mean the relationship is doomed. Disappointment doesn't automatically mean you've harmed someone. Sometimes discomfort simply means you're doing something new, you're interrupting an old pattern, you're no longer automatically abandoning yourself. And honestly, that can feel incredibly uncomfortable at first. Another huge pattern that emerged was anticipatory living, or what I call living into the wreckage of the future. My clients were not reacting to actual events, but to anticipated emotional experiences. So they were reacting to anticipated guilt, anticipated rejection, anticipated anger, anticipated disappointment, anticipated conflict, judgment, anticipated abandonment. By doing all this, you're trying to prevent discomfort rather than survive it. And you can survive discomfort. So often, people were trying to solve emotional experiences that had not even happened yet. And I think many listeners will recognize this. Rehearsing conversations over and over again. I was famous for that. Trying to predict every reaction, trying to soften every possible disappointment, trying to avoid every uncomfortable feeling before it even arrives. That is fucking exhausting, and it keeps us externally focused. You cannot create internal safety when you are focused externally. Another thing these transcripts reinforced very strongly is the role of resentment. Resentment showed up again and again as information, usually not because someone was inherently selfish or terrible, actually never because of that, but because the client had overridden themselves for so long that resentment became the only remaining signal. So resentment often tells us things like, I've left myself, I'm overextended, I'm doing too much, I'm trying to earn safety through usefulness, I'm tolerating something that doesn't work for me. That is incredibly important information. One of the most powerful insights that emerged from analyzing these transcripts is this. People often think boundaries are about what you say to other people, but internal boundaries are about what happens internally when discomfort shows up. That means, can you remember what's true for you when someone's disappointed instead of immediately talking yourself out of your needs, your limits, or your feelings? Can you tolerate guilt without automatically deciding that you've done something wrong? Can you stay anchored in your own reality when someone else's emotions make you want to collapse into people-pleasing, over-explaining, or a self-abandonment? Can you hear yourself clearly when fear or tension shows up? Can you hold on to what's true for you instead of automatically prioritizing someone else's comfort over your own internal signals? Can you take your own needs seriously without putting them on trial? Can you avoid overriding yourself just because discomfort disappears? Just because comfort Okay, let me back up. Can you avoid overriding yourself just because discomfort shows up? That is the real work. And honestly, I think this is why so many smart, insightful, self-aware people still struggle with boundaries. Because insight alone is not enough. You can intellectually understand boundaries and still emotionally collapse under once the discomfort begins. And that's why I've become so interested in this notion of internal safety. Because internal safety is not about controlling other people or becoming hard. And it's not about never feeling uncomfortable. It's about learning how to stay emotionally anchored in yourself during discomfort instead of automatically overriding your own feelings, limits, needs, and truth. And honestly, I think that's one of the deepest forms of self-care there is. Not bubble baths, not productivity hacks, not perfect morning routines, but being able to hear yourself clearly, to remember yourself, being able to stay anchored in your own needs, limits, feelings, and values, even when discomfort appears. Taking your own needs seriously without putting them on trial. Allowing discomfort without treating it like a catastrophe. That's real self-care, and it changes everything. One final thing I want to share. As I analyzed these transcripts, I noticed that so many clients already knew what they needed. Their body knew. Their resentment knew. Their exhaustion knew. Their tension knew. Their sadness knew. But they kept overriding those signals in order to preserve harmony, avoid guilt, maintain identity, or prevent emotional fallout. That's why the title of my upcoming course feels so important to me. Boundaries that hold, how to stop overriding yourself in real time, because that's what I keep seeing. Not people who lacked intelligence or who lacked insight or caring, but people who started overriding their own feelings, limits, needs, and truth the moment discomfort appeared. And honestly, I think many of us do that. So if you take nothing else from today's episode, let it be this. You do not merely need help setting boundaries. You may need help learning how to hold on to yourself when boundaries activate fear, guilt, uncertainty, disappointment, grief, relational tension, or any kind of emotional discomfort. That is the deeper work, and that work is possible, and I'm living proof. So here's to you becoming more whole. If you've ever left work exhausted, resentful, or wondering why you keep saying yes when you're already overwhelmed, I want you to know something. Most people don't struggle with workplace boundaries because they don't know what to say. They struggle because of what happens after they try to set one, sometimes even before. The guilt, the pressure, the fear of disappointing people, the urge to soften it, explain more, or take it back completely. That's exactly what I'll be teaching in my upcoming live workshop, Boundaries at Work, Prevent Burnout and Protect Your Energy, happening Wednesday, June 10th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk about why boundaries collapse under pressure, what real-time self-override actually looks like at work, and how to stay connected to yourself when discomfort shows up. You'll leave with practical workplace scripts, real-world examples, and a much deeper understanding of what actually makes boundaries hold. Learn more at higherpowercc.com/boundariesatwork.